Hi, Tammeron. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. It really is an honor to speak with you today, Adrianne.
Thank you. And same, because I cannot believe how much our lives are similar, not only to our past journeys, but to our journey today. And
Absolutely.
I was floored. I mean, Brother Brad, when he connects people, he always knows that there's synergy and similarities, but it's almost creepy how much alike we are. When I talked to you about being the first female in Canada to own a private investigation agency, you told me you were
The first female investigator in a company back in the late 80s. So, I mean, I'm dating myself here, but yeah, I was
That's
the first
okay.
female in that company. And of course, when I joined, that's when the magic happened. I mean,
Of
I'm going to
course.
say,
Yeah,
like, yeah,
trailblazer, right? And
yeah.
did you know going in that you were the only female, or did it even dawn on you? Because you and I already had this conversation. For me, I just do what I'm passionate about. My whole kind of motto is regardless of gender, regardless of obstacles. And so I just do what I love and love what I do. So did you know going in it was a male predominant industry at the time?
I don't even think about that stuff. Like, I'm like you. It's like, I knew what I wanted and I just go for it. I really believe that now I understand myself a lot more. I've been in this self-development journey for a long time and I've always acted on instinct. And that's always given me my greatest leaps and bounds in life and through ups and downs
I
of many
love that.
challenges. And, our intuition always guides us. And to
Sure
be honest,
does.
yeah, and to be honest, I wanted to be a police officer when I was younger, but in my
Okay. I'm
20s,
gonna keep saying same, but okay, go on.
but I did want to carry a gun. I was terrified. And this is the thing. I believed at that time, it was a mindset that if I ever had to come face to face with a perp, that, I wouldn't be able to be fast enough to protect myself and to pull a gun out if I ever needed to. Like that was my fear because it was based on TV. Like I wasn't
Even
around a
now,
lot of people, right? So I was scared to carry a gun. And so I used to see this ad in a local Toronto newspaper at the time, and it was join our school and become a private investigator. And I used to stare at that ad and I'm like, that might be the answer. And so I just applied, went for an interview, and of course, enrolled in the school. And then what I realized was that my desire to serve and to protect was the core part of myself that I was drawn to that industry. And now, as an astrologer, I understand that in my astrological birth chart, I have a very strong placement in what I call the first house, which is who you are, of being a detective.
I
So, I
love
mean,
that.
our lives are mapped out, whether we believe in the woo-woo stuff or not. And when I saw that in my chart, I was like, oh yeah, that's an
Yeah,
amazing validation.
a
So that's
hundred
where it came from.
percent. I love your story because our stories are so aligned. I mean, I did when I started the investigation agency, it was really to help out some former police detectives. And I thought, okay, you know what, I'll stay in it for about 5 years. But as soon as I got into it, I mean, we get the 911 calls, and the people that call us, their families are at risk of falling apart, their professional lives are at risk. And, for me, my love of the business was serving others. And I feel that, like you said, private investigation for me was always just a conduit to helping others and to serving others. And so I became a certified life coach through Tony Robbins, as I mentioned. And it's just sort of history from there. And now with what I'm doing, with the I Am Unbreakable podcast and the magazine, is just taking it one step further because I've been in business for so long. I think I closed my books quite a few years ago, but as a life coach, I had a 2.5 year wait list, which said to me and spoke to me to say that there are many people that require services that are outside of the box or the traditional, let's say, therapeutic box. And people are looking for other answers aside from, and not to say anything is wrong with, therapists and psychologists and whatnot, but they were looking for truths, answers, support through non-traditional methods. And, we're going to chat a little bit about where your road has taken you, but it is so incredibly interesting. And I'm sure as you started writing, you kind of looked back at your journey and your path, and same here, that, wow, I've kind of done this my whole life, picking just what I loved. Didn't matter if it was, women driven or male predominant. It was just doing what you loved. But how interesting that you are also now serving other people in such a profound, unconventional way.
Oh, yeah. And welcome to the age of Aquarius. I mean, that's what many of us are doing, whether we realize it or not. And that's why a lot of us are, and I'll answer your question a little bit, but I just want to remind people that, what's happening in the astrological sky is happening to all of us down here on the planet, whether we recognize it or not. That's like, the image of like the iceberg and, what's happening under the water, or, the sky. And, astrology is an ancient science that has been around for like thousands of years.
And I want to say a proven science. It's not just, hocus pocus. And of course, like in every industry, people commercialize it or, let's just say cheapen or do not do justice to the industry. But I'm very spiritual, and I believe in many different things because there's been just way too much evidence-based, not only science, but things that I can tell you that myself, my clients, my friends, my family have experienced, to talk it away. There is no such thing as coincidence, in my humble opinion.
Oh, I agree with
What
that.
do you think about coincidence?
I believe this is what I say to people, whether, whenever what you're going through, like when clients come to me, first thing I do is I look at their astrological birth chart and I go, okay, this is real. This is happening and this is why. And then I explain it and people just go, whoa. Like it's so validating. And then I'm able to calm people down and I go, but there's a purpose to it, So I don't think that things are chance and accident. People say to me, oh, can you tell me when this is going to happen? I go, no, I don't do predictive astrology. I'm more about helping you understand yourself and validating what you're going through. But I would just say when the stars line up, they're going to line up and it's going to happen when it's meant to happen. Like, people have this, oh, tell me this, tell me that. It's like, no, astrology can be more validating. It's not going to a psychic. It's about validating who you are as a person, validating some of these experiences you're having. And then I'm going to guide you as to how you can manage your emotional well-being and your mental health to get through the challenge and to gain the wisdom and the knowledge so that you can be of service. So my clients can be of service and pass down that knowledge later once they heal. So it is a journey, right?
The whole journey thing, I'm convinced that I keep telling people whenever I speak to people, again, another coincidence, not so much. Clearly, I have a few tattoos, right? Oh, where's my feather? Somewhere
Just
here.
One or two? I only have
one or two.
And you don't see
I have
unless
many.
you're left.
But exactly. But I always say, life's a journey, not a destination. And I wish, I came up with that saying, maybe, I would have a similar bank account to Aerosmith, but life really is a journey. People always think, once I land this job or once I have this husband or this wife and this many kids or this amount of money, that will equate happiness and that will be the end of my journey, or that will be the ultimate happiness, where it's like, you never stop your journey until, we stop on, Earth. And then your journey still continues if you believe that or not. But, it really is a journey. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get a career, I'm going to do a business, have the family. And I love the fact that you're sending that message out that even once you heal or once you get through what you're going through, it's going to be a continuous journey regardless.
Oh. Absolutely. And I agree with you. And I love the quote you used because that's one of the quotes that I actually have printed inside of my spiritual guidebook that I've created. So as an author, that's what I give to my clients when they join my membership inside of my academy. And it's full of quotes like that too. And I agree with what you're saying. It's not about reaching something. And to be honest, Adrianne, that's why I was suicidal. I had that limiting belief was, okay, if I just do this and if I just go to school, like you said, and I get a job and I can, provide something, to a relationship or whatever, I meet somebody, I have kids, I'm married, and I got the white picket fence that I'm going to be happy. And it was like, wait a minute, I am miserable.
Yeah.
I am not happy. In fact, I was suicidal and I could
I
not figure out what I thought I had done wrong
I love the
because
fact.
that was my belief.
I love that. And thank you for sharing, but I want to just rewind for a second. The fact that you can come out in a podcast and say, I was suicidal. You've got a smile on your face. I know what a rock star you are because I know the things that you've accomplished, that you've done, and where you're going and where you are right now. You know that I'm a huge mental health ally and advocate. I have and love many people that suffered tremendously and have overcome and are still suffering, as well as clients. And I just want to celebrate you for 30 seconds and say what a beautiful, wonderful soul you are and how brave and courageous you are to come on and say, yeah, well, I think that's why I was suicidal. It's so matter of fact, but it's people like you that really break the bias and really just sort of normalize, like, you know what, I felt like this at one point in my life, but hey, and you just say it like it's sort of just part of your story, which, my other tattoo, the struggle is part of the story. It's part of your story. And I feel it's why you were put here was to go through the hard times, whatever those were and whatever they are, and can sometimes for people continue to be, but yet you're here talking about it and how beautiful, brave, and courageous you are.
Oh, Adrianne, thank you so much. And you know what? You're making me cry. But it's
I'm
true. And I'm
sorry,
being
but
vulnerable because over 21 years ago, it was not a fun place to be. And I tell this message to so many people that feeling suicidal is not something you should be ashamed of. For me, feeling suicidal was because I felt alone. And the people that I reached out to, I wasn't getting the intuitive results that were lining up with me, like get medicated, follow what we're telling you to do and stuff. I was like, but it's not working.
it's not working.
It's
Yeah,
not working. What's not working? And so I had to break away and trust my intuition and go, this isn't helping me. And I felt that the suicidal is about feeling alone. That's why people, I
hopeless.
believe, are suicidal because we are not raised in a society that raising our hand and saying, I need help is acceptable. Like women still
100%.
think that when we're asking for help, that we're weak. I mean, it's our generation of the women before us. I know so many amazing women who are older than me. And I go, I know you need help, but they go, but I don't know. I can't ask for help. Like I feel ashamed. It's generational. Whereas our generation, I think, is like, no, it's your superpower.
Exactly.
Stick your
Oh,
hand up.
it is your superpower. And I love that. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry,
Oh,
but
I love
feel that
crying. That's like I've cleansed, I shifted through something again. That's the
yeah.
power of, it's,
Well,
I'm
I hope you
real.
felt, yes, and I hope you felt my love and admiration for you
Yeah.
because, as you said, I mean, just going back, I remember as a young girl, telling my mom and saying, Mom, I know I feel like worried all the time. I feel like I don't even think the word anxiety existed back then, but I was like, I'm worried. I feel like, worried, and she's like, about what? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't think it's anything. And she was like, shh, they're going to lock you up in 999 Queen Street. But that was what they were taught. I mean, she immigrated here and everything. She is a wonderful mother. I say was, like, she's passed. She hasn't. She's here still driving me nuts and, helping me with everything in my life. So she's my best friend. But that was what they thought. So of course, that is what they would tell their children because that is what they thought was going to happen and sometimes probably did happen. So they didn't know any better. But now, decades into mental health, we do know better. And for somebody like yourself to come out and say, well, when I was suicidal, just so matter of factly, I don't think we ever celebrate somebody that can actually talk about it and say it. So that was why I took a second to celebrate you.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to probably have to do our podcast in 2 parts, because your strength and your courage, the bravery, and then being able to mold that into something, like you said, to help other people is so empowering, and it's profound as a human being that, you know, you can do that. So I just think, as I said, that you're absolutely fantastic. And
Oh,
I
thank you
know
so much.
your clients and the people that you touch and the people that read your books and whatever else that you have out there is it's going to be a wealth of knowledge for them. Because like you said, there was a point, did you say 20 years ago?
Yeah, over 21 in 2000. So
Yes, 21
2023.
years ago. I bet you didn't have anybody to like look up or say, I wonder how, you know, I could get through this. Like you said, it was very much the conventional. And now the amazing things you're doing, you are giving back. And that
Mhm.
is so incredible, and to really be celebrated, because you're empowering humans, I say, regardless of gender, but I'm
Yeah.
sure, you know, you're empowering other women, because a lot of times as women, we are told, like you said, be strong, you know, shoulders back, chin up, but meanwhile inside you're suffering.
Yeah. And to remain quiet. Like, you know, and I agree with you. It is, I think it's generational. Um, and you know, even my story of how I found help blows people away. It makes
Okay,
people
you got, please
stand up because
tell.
I found someone who did help me. And this is what brought me into this kind of woo-woo world, but it's true. Like,
Tell
you
me.
know, I
Share.
was in counseling. I had gone to an initial, so my first trip to the doctor was, I couldn't figure out what was crying all the time. My father had just passed, right? So I went through this huge emotional trauma, dealing with grief just before the millennial rolled in. And in January on my birthday, I could not stop crying and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And when my father passed, I had a sense of peace inside of me. So it was like, okay, there's got to be something more. So what did my doctor do, who was doing her job? Here's the name of a family counselor you can go to for free. Oh, and here's a prescription for depression, right? Bam. Now, I had been going to her already quite a bit because I was getting sinus infections. I was having other issues, feminine issues and stuff. And so my physical body was finally falling apart. So from an energetic level, like things happen from the inside and then it manifests physically. So there was a lot of emotional turmoil going on, right?
Of course.
Going to that initial counselor, I was like, why is the counselor asking me questions? Like, I was like, okay, I don't understand why I'm in this counselor's office. She is not helping me. And I had to leave that counselor. And even the meds my doctor gave me, I took 1 dose that first day and I was spinning out of control because I'm super sensitive to meds. So I had to throw them in the garbage. So I was like, okay, that's not an option either. And I had 2 young children I had to look after. And I was a stay-at-home mom, volunteering, which was more than a full-time job, right?
Of
And
it
I was a
always
mom,
is.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Doing a lot of crazy stuff. And so, and my partner was away at that time a lot for work. So I was dealing with a lot of things. And so when I found a counselor that I had to pay out of my pocket, very expensive. I sat down and within 10 minutes, that woman said to me, oh, I know exactly what you're dealing with. And I'm like, what? How come no one's been able to help me for so long? So she said to me, look, you're going to come back next week. And if you're willing to work through this, I'm going to give you some homework. And I was like, okay. She goes, I'm going to give you a list of books to read. And she said to me, I want you to just take a breath and answer one question. And I was like, what is that? And she said, what are you feeling? And I was like, well,
I feel like shit. That's why I'm here.
no, I was like dumbfounded. And she
Yeah.
was like, well, of course she was a counselor. She knew what I was talking about because no one had ever asked me what I was feeling. I didn't
Oh,
understand this whole emotional mental wellness. And so I said to her, I feel at peace. And she goes, okay, so you think this, your father's issue is what's making you sad. And it's not. She goes, it's bigger. And that's when I realized, like I said, the white picket fence story, that my perceived life that I thought I needed to achieve to obtain happiness was a lie. That was the lie. And I was like, so I had to work on healing myself. And she gave me some things to read. And not long after that, as I had started, I actually sat down. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 months later, through a new friend that I had met. She was highly intuitive, and her and I became very good friends. So she kind of picked up on what was happening in my world, and she recommended that I go see a medium, a psychic medium. I didn't even know what a psychic medium was. Okay.
Okay.
In Eastern, outside of Eastern Toronto, Peterborough area.
Okay.
Went there and it was recorded. And you can imagine I had no self-esteem. Okay. I was in a toxic relationship. So I was like this big. And I remember, and I still have the recording, a psychic saying to me, you will get through this. And he said to me, and by the way, and he was channeling, so he wasn't giving me a psychic medium. They get messages from other people,
Yeah.
and they give you the message. And he said, you are genuinely suicidal. Don't do it. Because suicidal people are people that are not reaching out for help. And that was my first introduction to even understanding myself, because
Wow.
I was so trapped. I was so trapped in stuff. I didn't know how I was going to get out. And I just had so many things on my mind. And it was like, I knew I had to leave, and I knew I had to make changes about my entire body and looking after myself as well. And I was a mom of young kids. And that was that, everywhere I went, people were like, whatever. But he did say to me, and he stopped the recording, and I can say it now. He stopped that recording and he said, I don't normally do this. He said, but you will get out. And he said, and someday you are going to help other people. When he told me that, I was like, I don't know who he's talking about. My
Yeah.
hand was like this. I'm like, I think he's got somebody else. Like, I don't know. Right. But now I'm like, man, that psychic was bang on.
Yeah.
Right. But it was a journey. I mean, I've gone through so many things and got a lot of accreditations and been to school and helped so many people. And now I'm just at this stage because of where my children are and where everybody's settled. It's like, it's now finally time for me.
It sounds like you've almost come to this, I hate to say coming of age, because that could be in your 20s, your 30s, your 80s, but you've kind of a coming of age where you've got this peace about you, kind of like, you know what, I've been through hell and back. I've walked through fire and across glass. I'm on the other side. I've carried a ton of people over the glass and the fire, and I feel good. And you
Yeah,
have this,
I'm
you
at
can tell
peace.
you've got this peace about you, which is so beautiful to see, considering what you had to endure when you were younger.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you know what, Adrianne, is even the astrology validated that. So as an astrologer, like, I'm a bit of a nerd. So that's another clue of being a PI or a detective, is like, we have to study. It's like when you get a file, right? I remember getting a file, like, okay, this person I have to follow. This is,
Yeah.
you got to do your research first, right? Where are you going to go? Where do they live? What does the person look like? Like, that's what doing an astrology reading too, is you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together to create this treasure map of a spiritual journey for people. And that's what I do, is I look at all the clues and I look at all the signatures and I go, okay, this is what you're here to learn. I tell people that, which blows people away. This is your spiritual lesson. You're in this crisis moment now because you got to go over here. Like, you're here to gain this, but you're here right now. And I'm going to guide you as how you can get through this so that you can blossom and evolve and to gain that spiritual wisdom and make your life feel like it makes sense and it has value.
That's
right?
amazing.
And that's what I had to do. And it took that long, but even in astrology, it'll kind of give you an age or an era of when that's going to blossom and happen. So it's exactly right. And you're right. Even Carolyn Miss, who was one of my favorite spiritual teachers, had a quote that she always used. I bought her books and I saw her talk. She was part of Hay House. And she used to have this saying that you live the first half of your life got nothing to do with age. You live the first half of your life gaining the wisdom and the knowledge, and you will spend the other half of your life passing down that knowledge.
I love that. That is
So it has
amazing.
nothing to do with age. You don't
Yeah.
know when that's going to happen, but an
I
astrologer
was
can
gonna
predict it.
say, yeah, you don't know. So that could be, regardless of age, it could be at any time. But I love that because it's so right. People always say, every decade comes wisdom and you're at a different stage in your life. But, if you really look back to when you were in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, however old folks may be, you're so in such a different mindset and headspace than you were there. Right? When you look
Oh,
back,
geez.
because I always say,
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut. I'm a totally different person. Like
huge.
when I used to look back at photos, I'm like, I look and I go, I was
Who
so
is this person?
different back then. Because I remember the trauma. I remember what I used to worry about. But again, and this is in my astrology chart, is I have a very strong Cancer placement, which is what makes me happy and makes me fulfilled. So I love to nurture. So being a stay-at-home mom and being there for my children, and even watching my kids, being around, being, available while they went to school, and being available in COVID. I mean, we all had to go somewhere, and now everybody's settled again. And I took COVID and I used it to, become an astrologer, get my business online. Like I was like, okay, it's either going to be now or never. It's kind of like it all just kind of evolved and it happened, right? If that makes sense. So,
Absolutely.
as a woman who was a stay-at-home mom, I could not do what I'm doing now 20 years ago. It wouldn't have happened for me because I had to be around my children.
Well, yeah. And I don't know if you were maybe in the mindset, for me, it's always about where you are in your life and whether, excuse me, you're a stay-at-home mom, which is one of the most important jobs we will ever have,
Mm-hmm.
or you're in the corporate world, or you're an entrepreneur. There comes a point in time that you want to rebuild. And if rebuild means, switching careers, starting your own business, whatever it may be, it takes a lot of headspace, right? It takes a lot of space to be able to do it and to do it right. And like you said, you were in that right headspace, whether it had to do with, the lockdown or not. I feel like it was your time, is what you're really saying. It was my time because my kids are settled, they're a little bit older, but it was also about you, because even if your kids are settled and you're still, a chocolate disaster and you can't, think about things and think about helping others, it would be tough. But it sounded like you were so grounded and you're like, my time's going to come. And I'm going to wait. I'm going to be patient. Sounds like you've got a lot of education and other wonderful things that you've done with your life. And then it was your turn, right?
Absolutely. And, and I don't regret any of it. I don't regret anything. Like that's one thing that a good friend of mine, like, we're like this, we've known each other since we were 7. She did the corporate world. She never had kids. Not that she don't want kids. It just didn't happen. And so
Yep.
we have these very deep conversations every time we're together. And I just saw her recently. And, we always say it's so wild how we're both always going through the same storyline. It just shows up very different in our lives. And so
That's so
COVID,
funny. Same with my best friend too. And it's just like,
yeah.
really? And then when something happens, she's like, oh, damn, don't tell me we're going through this again. I'm like, yeah. She goes, oh, like, I mean, it's going to happen to me. You know that, right? And I'm like,
I
sorry,
hear you.
probably, right?
Yeah. And that was the one thing she used to say to me. Like, I remember years ago when it was still very tough. And she said, do you have any regrets? Because I became divorced. She became divorced with no kids.
I got to
Not at
ask you,
all.
during the pandemic,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's sorry or congratulations. I never know what
Oh,
to say.
did I get divorced through the pandemic?
Yeah.
Oh, no, 20 years ago.
Oh,
I
this
got,
was 20 years ago. Oh, okay.
oh,
Sorry, no,
yeah.
I was saying through the pandemic, did you get divorced? Because I was like, most people's businesses very sadly either came to a screeching halt. They had to rejig their business. They had to do new business models, as did we. We had to implement a ton of new assistive technology and whatnot. But our business grew 600%. Because if you can imagine, you know, whether it's infidelity, questionable behavior, child custody, divorce, all of that was still happening. Like it didn't stop, believe it or not, just because the pandemic was here, it did not stop. And so, you know, to your point, it's just like, it's just odd the way things would have like transpired or turned out. But for you, it sounds like that gave you an opportunity to set up shop and do your business. And here you are killing it.
Yeah. And it was interesting because back in 2016, I closed my brick and mortar business in Southern Ontario, and my kids were away in school, college and university. And I said, okay, guys, like it's time for me to figure out this online world. People keep telling me you're a storyteller, you're a speaker, like you got to get out there. And I had the stories, but to be honest, I didn't see the power that I carried. I didn't see what I had overcome, because I was still dealing with some stuff, right? I was dealing with some emotional work that I still had to do.
I mean,
But when
don't we, hold
COVID
on,
hit,
don't we always have emotional work to do? Or
we
is it
do,
just me?
but
I feel like if the second you stop growing or sort of challenging yourself to be better, to be different, to be more knowledgeable, I feel like that's when people start to get depressed and have anxiety and stuff. So I feel like we always have to continue to grow. Because when I look at you and I hear your story, and when I went, oh, because I was just like, imagine, it doesn't matter because we cannot look back and change the past. But I wish you would have, even if you just started, you know, talking to your phone, imagine, you know, just sort of taking in that journey. But I'm sure you're sharing it now, like you said, through your work. So I don't think it was all for nothing, right?
oh no, I wasn't publicly sharing, I was writing because people kept telling me to
That's what I
write.
was going to say.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I did it. And a lot of those stories that I worked on, I'm still sharing, but what I really needed to focus on was how to master the animal of social media. I mean, I came up here thinking it was going to take me a year. I was like saying to my kids, okay, guys, I'll have this done in a year. Me, the goal setter. I'm such a Capricorn. Okay, I've got the list. Okay, it's going to happen there. And it was just, there were so many things that I had to go through and went through. And again, I don't regret it because it helped me to evolve and to offer more ways that I can empower people with emotional challenges, because I do have certain certifications and testimonials and in ways that can help people. But my biggest challenge, Adrianne, was the social media. So
And
when
it's ever
COVID hit, it
changing.
was like, I'm doing it now. And, when you declare something, that's when the people always magically show up. Right?
Absolutely. And I feel like with the social media, we didn't grow up with it. You know, our kids did and do. And so if I ever have a question, they're like, oh my God, you're such a boomer. I'm like, first of all, your
Well, my
grandmother's a
kids too.
boomer. Your grandmother is a boomer, not me, but thanks for coming out, jackass. And I'm just kidding. And they do it so quickly. It's sort of second nature. It's kind of like their third arm, where they've got the phone or some kind of electronics attached to them. But it is so incredibly interesting that when you figure something out, then something else changes or it's added. But it's so incredibly interesting to me because so many people, mothers and fathers that I know, say, well, I teach my kids this and I teach my kids that. And I'm like, my biggest teachers were my children.
Oh,
And I
me
don't know
too.
if you feel that way as well, but they've taught me patience, a lot of patience. They've taught me unconditional love. They've taught me about social media and so many other amazing things. So I think if we sort of change our narrative slightly, as opposed to, saying, well, I taught them all this stuff. But you're right. It's hard because they do it quickly. And for me, I'm a very much a visual learner. I have to take my time. I have to try it. I have to write it down. If you do it quick, you know what? I'm missing it. So I'm sure you're the same way, where you have to kind of navigate through it at your own pace and at your own speed. And is that how you figured out social media, for those people that are still trying to struggle through it?
Kinesthetic. You're visual, I'm kinesthetic. So I have to do it. So I say to my kids,
both.
like, you're right. They go so fast, right? And I go, guys, don't even show me, because I can't follow you and remember. I have to do it. And so
Mine
when they
both,
take the
yeah.
time to, and I record everything on Zoom, right? And I can always go back to it. But once I do it once, it's like I have that memory. So it's really good. And you're right. And I rely on my kids so much. But you know what, Adrianne? They're my cheering squad. They are my wings.
I
Like,
love
and
that.
they read my newsletters and they look at my flyers and they look at everything and they go, Mom, you got to change that. Mom, that shouldn't be on that page. Get rid of that. You don't need that, you know?
I love
And
that.
I love
Yeah.
it. So they are there, and of course they've experienced everything. They have seen me grow. They've been a part of everything in my life too. It wasn't just about me. They were a big part of it too. And so it's amazing how they go. When I say to people, okay, I asked them recently, I gave them my new updated bio, my new information. And I said, so when people ask you what your mom does, I go, here you go. This is my new content. And my youngest son looked at me and he goes, never mind. You're just our mom. And I was like, oh, love my kids. I
I
love my
know.
kids.
You're like the most important job ever, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I say to ever. I mean, as I said, I love what I do. And but there's a balance. But yeah, to your point, my kids, it's the same. Like unconditional love for them. And the fact that they cheer you on, I love that. My kids do too. I've got one kid who, if he watches this, he will not be happy with me, but he does a lot of social media. So he's always same. He's like, okay, you should do this. Well, this is trending now. So, make sure you include this and colored captions with, bings and noises. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I thought I just got this down like last week. He's like, nope, it's always changing. You got to keep up on the trends. I'm like, note to self. So it's wonderful though, isn't it? That you get into that different relationship as your kids sort of mature, we'll say mature, and they get into sort of their own life, that they are wonderful human beings. So you did a good job, amazing job by the sound of it.
Mom, number one job, right? And it's so empowering to know, because we're not perfect as parents. Like we mess up, I screw up, whatever. But, I'm tying in the astrology again. But when I became a certified astrologer over COVID, which when I started, I was like, okay, I had to have been an astrologer in a lifetime. There was no way I picked it up
Oh, in
so
your past
fast.
life, for sure.
Oh, so fast. And I mean, astrologer is really a healer. Like we're looking at your soul, like, and we
That's the
see
way
it
that I look
all.
at it.
We see it all. I don't choose to go to dark places in someone's chart. Some people do. It's like, I'm not here to see your dark secrets. Okay. I'm here to empower someone. I'm here to say, yes, what you're going through is validating. Let's guide you out of it, and then you're going to have that wisdom. I don't need to, that's how empowering it is. But getting back to my kids, when I became an astrologer, when we study anything in self-development, what's the first thing we do? We go look at somebody else, somebody that matters to us,
Of
right? Or
course.
someone we're in conflict with. Got to understand it. That's the PI. It's you got to research that other person.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Why did this happen? And what, whatever, right? But that's our innate nature, which I'm sure you relate to. So when I studied my kids' charts and just my immediate family, I was like,
How can I unsee this?
no, not negative, more
No,
of now I understand the dynamics, because I love to talk about the core essence of my astrology readings is teaching you about your love and your relationships, how you communicate, what you need to feel loved. That's your Venus placement, like how you express love and what you need to feel loved. So it goes deeper than the 5 love languages, right? Because this is your soul. And your Mars placement is how you take action, whether it's in business or towards sex or whatever. It's that courage, like what's going to make you go for it, right? And they're different placements. And so you understand people's dynamics. And then we have Mercury, which is how you communicate and how your brain works, how your intellectual mind works. So those 3 combination of things together, it was like, that's why I'm struggling with saying something to one of my kids and they hear this. Like I say this, they hear that. I'm like, why does that happen? Astrology tells me why. It's like, oh, so if I want him to hear this, I got to say it that way. So it
absolutely.
helped me in these relationships, because what I realized was that, a lot of the miscommunication and the reasons why I felt I suffered in the old traditional ways from, our past generations weren't helping me. Whereas astrology helped me to understand some of these people and the dynamics, even some of the toxic relationships that I was in. And then it gave me a chance to look at it and go,
I love that. I love
maybe,
that. And
right?
it's funny. The reason I was laughing about unseeing that is, being a former private investigator and for yourself, and even myself, my kids were like, we can't even fart sideways and she knows. Not that I would, again, record them or track them, although they knew if they gave me reason to, I would have like 5 investigators on them at any given time. I'm kidding. That it never.
Our kids might want to hang out.
Thank God. I know, right? But they're always like, oh my God, I can't do anything. Like I would even hear them. It was sort of cute when they were younger talking to their friends. Are like, I can't do this. You know what she does for a living, right? Even just recently, I think one of my younger son, whatever, was told, oh yeah, just leave your phone in your locker. It doesn't matter if you've got share your location. He's like, no way, man. She finds out I'm dead. And it was just such a sort of innocent thing, what they were talking about. But it's funny how they think that way. And I'm kind of like, listen, I trust you until I don't, until you give me reason not to. And you know what? Again, we're going back to the kid thing, but you got to give them a certain amount.
Yeah.
But then, there's lines you don't want them to cross. And, knock on wood, we've been quite fortunate to date. So let's hope it keeps down that road for now. But what I wanted to also ask you sort of in closing, because I really do feel like we need to do another sort of podcast, maybe even 2, because I've got so many questions that I still have for you. But I guess what I wanted to ask you, 2 or 3 sort of questions about you, is what keeps you up at night? Is there one thing?
Geez.
Well, I don't want
I don't have
that part of
anxiety.
it.
I do
But
not
I
have
mean,
anything
like,
that
what
keeps me
keeps
up.
you up? Yeah, thinking, is there like something that you're really like sort of struggling with right now? Is there some, world problem that you're wanting to be a part of the solution? Is there something right now that you're struggling with?
I wouldn't say struggle. And I'm the opposite, right? So I don't see, and the reason why I think you're asking that too is because your mind goes with anxiety. Like you shared that in your past. Whereas I've suffered from depression. So my mind works the other way. My mind isn't, racing and trying, and I can't sleep. I have the opposite. I can sleep and I need the pick me up. I need that inspiration.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Sure. Oh,
I get what you're
does.
saying.
I think I asked the question wrong.
No,
Is
I get what you're saying.
No, and I love your answer because you're so right in that. But I guess what I would like to ask you is there something right now maybe that you're working on? Is there something that, I feel as entrepreneurs, we've always got the next thing. And sometimes we struggle with that. And sometimes, we're like, okay, I know I want to do this. Not sure how I'm going to get there, but I'm going. So is there something that you've got in your mind that you are working on that you feel that you're going to get to? And I ask you this because I hope in 3 to 5 years, when we're still doing podcasts together, I'm going to say, hey, remember our first episode together? You said you were, and look at you now.
Yes. And thank you for changing how you're asking the question. And I want to break that mold. I want to break the mold about this thinking with the mental health that if you have a problem or if you have a crisis or if you feel you need support from somebody else, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with feeling like you can't do it all. In fact, when we reword it or change the mindset around that, is understanding that when we reach out and when we ask for help, just like in school, is that you will grow and you will blossom and you will meet new people and you will meet the people that you are aligned based on the stars and what's happening to guide you as you move through your life, because we can't do anything alone. And there's that saying, you cannot raise a child alone. It takes a whole village. And so when we have that mindset, and recently this just happened to me too, like I've still got some challenges in my personal life too, but it's not a challenge for me. It's like, I don't have a vehicle. And it's like, I'm okay with not having a vehicle. People are like, man, you could write the book on a women's winter survival guide in Northern Ontario out in the woods without a vehicle. Like, how did you get around? You know, I
Yeah,
just ask people for help.
I
That's
love
my
that.
answer. I met the kindest people, and I
Wow.
built new relationships with people, and I was vulnerable, and I was willing to just say, hey, I got to save for a vehicle now because of things that happen in my life, but I'm willing to, share with gas or whatever. And people are like, oh, don't give me gas. But then they drop me off. And in the conversation of spending time together, I'm like, oh, gee, I'm listening to what they're telling me. And I'm like, would you, maybe I can recommend you drink this tea, or you take this Bach flower remedy, or you try some essential oils, or maybe you change your diet. And people are going, and I go, well, I happen to have a sample. Do you want some? Here you go. Because that's what I have access of.
I love that. And
Right. And
that
this
is
is the age of Aquarius that we're in. Like, Age of Aquarius is all about empathy and compassion, and it's about sharing, and it's about community, and it's about understanding that we all have something we can give in order for all of us to survive and thrive. So it's not about status. It's not about who you are, what your title is, how much money you make, how big your house is, the perfect white picket fence where most people are miserable underneath.
100%.
I know I was. I'm
We
not
could
saying
both
everybody.
attest, we could both attest to that 100%. But how interesting what you're saying, because that is what the whole premise of our culture is, for I Am Unbreakable in the community that I know you're going to be a part of now, is that whole grassroots approach. Because back in the day, that's what they did. They bartered their services, they bartered for food, they bartered for everything. Right.
That's
And I
where we're
feel
going.
like we're sort of getting back to that grassroots approach, which I love. And how amazing is it? Because really, would they ever have tried that tea? Would they ever have considered that change of diet or essential oil? Probably not. So you brought a gift into their life, and they gave you a gift back by giving you a lift or being able to get groceries or whatever the case may be. And I think that's so beautiful, because for the longest time, I think for the last several decades, we've been in this hustle and bustle and hurry and go here, go there kind of world. And I feel like the positive, I always try to take a positive from a negative. The positive, like you said about the pandemic for us, even as a family or as a community, is that everybody had to stop and look and be with each other, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and, we worked on relationships. Some relationships were severed, some relationships were fixed. And we got to know our families and who's under our roof so much better. And I think that's so incredibly important.
Oh yeah, totally. And I said, because I was just starting to study astrology on my own. I'm a YouTubeaholic. Like, I love YouTube, right? And I was already
Same.
studying astrology for a couple of years. And I was like, I knew it was the next thing I have to study because I'm a bit of a nerd. So I always have to be studying something, even if it's just for my own personal
Personal
interest.
growth. Yeah.
Like I always, I have a structure in the way I do things and the way my week flows. And, and I was like, something's coming. And listening to other astrologers, all these astrologers, big people were like, in the spring of 2020, something's going to happen. And nobody predicted a virus. They just kept saying something big is coming. And it was fascinating how I was already talking about that on some of the talks that I was doing and some of the networking groups, and saying, I'm interested in astrology. And I was just kind of sharing that. And then when it did happen, I just kind of said to everybody, no, the world's not falling apart. In fact, what I believed was that we are going through a massive spiritual awakening, because you're right. When you make choices to either fix something or not, some things are not fixable. Some things are just meant to be
1000%.
severed with love. You let it go, right? And you just allow things to fix in other ways. Sometimes we can't be that person. and some things got better, right?
Sure
And
did.
that's the awakening, because it was the choice we had to make. And so many people that I know, whether it's family, friends, or clients, it's like, and they say to me, but I'm so much happier now. I go, that is fulfillment.
Yeah.
That is what changes your vibe. And then you manifest and you attract the love and the beauty into your life, because it had to come from here,
100%. I love
close in
that.
your heart.
I love that. And, a lot of times, as well, the saying where, I'm not broken. It's just, that's how the light gets in. Right.
Yeah.
And thing is, sometimes you do the whole kind of, I am unbreakable, is that you do have to be broken to become unbreakable. Right. You do have to sort of, if you want to say, hit rock bottom or hit certain things in your life. I mean, you look at what you've gone through. I don't know that your path would have been the same if you didn't go through what you went through, because it taught you so much. And I'm sure it taught you a ton of love and empathy and compassion for those going through the same. And you found a way to serve them through astrology and many other gifts that you have through your program and whatnot. So I give kudos to you, and I wish you were here. I'd give you a big, huge hug. And thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing and that you continue to do. And I would be so honored if you would do another podcast with us and be part of the magazine and whatnot as well. You've got so much to offer.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And thank you. Thank you for that. And I would definitely love to come back to be a guest. I feel like between the two of us, we just have so much knowledge to share. And
We
it's fascinating because you went to Tony Robbins to get your training, your certification. And when I left my relationship, that was the first thing I did back. I can't remember what year it was. I'm going to say probably, I'd have to look at my LinkedIn profile, but in the early 2000s, I became a certified life coach with a huge company. It was back in the old days where you had to call in and listen to the old
Oh
webinar.
yeah, remember with the rotary
1
phone?
year.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Back in the day, I don't think it was that long ago, but yes, I do remember those days. That's awesome. And same as what you said, that we have so many similarities. We still haven't even, kind of scratched the surface of how many things that we can chat about. So please, I look forward to having you as a guest again. And thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much, Adrianne. Thank you. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure. I look forward to coming back.